Thank you so much for that. As somebody whose family and culture has been very divorced from him from colonization, that hit really hard. And I appreciate you being able to sit here and share that with us so much. I so deeply wish that I was more in touch with who I was and my own ancestors. And I hope someday I can, and I hope someday everybody sitting here can. Because that is who you are at the end of the day, and it's so important. So thank you.
RJ, you can skip that phone because it's really
All
the
right.
phone.
So hello, everybody. My name is RJ Majesty. I'm Mr. TMK, Trans Mas Kingster 2026. And today I want to talk about masculinity. So I want to start by saying that this was inspired by a Facebook post, actually, by somebody who was on my timeline the other day and merely posed a simple-ish question: what does being a man mean, anyway? Preloaded. I think this question was a realization that this person's idea of masculinity was no longer serving him. And this makes a lot of sense. Societal ideas of masculinity in the United States often prioritize unattainable and rigidly defined ideals. You can probably guess some of them: dominance, emotional suppression, self-reliance. As a trans man, I deeply sympathize with the desire to understand masculinity. But I think rather than ask what is masculinity or what is a man, let's instead ask how can we best represent a model of positive, healthy masculinity that benefits both ourselves and our community. Now, there is not a one-size-fits-all answer to this question, but the fact that such questions are being asked, both by cisgender and transgender men, no less, points to a need for us to investigate masculinity in the kink and leather community and reframe, redefine, and rethink it. In order to do so, I want to touch on a few points today and acknowledge what we can do and what I've been doing, both on an individual level and on the community level. So I'm a firm believer that, as we've touched on a little bit today, one must first engage with and acknowledge the ways in which patriarchy and toxic definitions of masculinity do not serve oneself. Only then can we do the work, like embracing one's own emotional literacy and understanding that masculinity is intersectional and affected by many different factors and lived experiences. Make a point to interact with and become comfortable with many ideas of gender and performances of gender. We can choose a masculinity that is not defined against an other, like femininity, but something that stands in its own right. We can learn not to forego one's own core values in favor of fitting into societal ideas of masculinity. And my personal favorite, understand that masculinity and gender overall is performance, and ask who you're performing to. You should also investigate masculinity within community spaces, particularly leather and kink communities. We need to acknowledge again, as a community, the ways in which patriarchy and toxic definitions of masculinity do not serve others. Instead of masculinity just being something that we perform on a personal level, we must also collectively see and understand and discuss as a community what it means to us. To this end, I think I see two community-centered approaches, one of which is reconstructing or reframing traditional norms of masculinity. And in this way, we can focus on being pro-social and hone in on attitudes and behaviors to protect and uplift everybody in the community and center these as masculine. There's also a deconstructive approach, or eliminating the boundaries of masculinity altogether. In this way, we can detach everyone's self-worth from the need to be masculine and understand that even reframing positive traits of masculinity can still put people in a box. To this end, my work has been trying to include some of this. I am Mr. TMK, Mr. Trans Mas Kingster. So in this way, I've been trying to create and highlight representation of different ways of being masculine. I've invited many members of TMK, as part of my club, to show up to events and represent what masculinity means to them. As a gender expansive title holder, I encourage other people who are gender expansive to step up to the plate and represent both themselves and the people that they care about. Finally, I want to show up and simply be. To simply show up and be. Because sometimes that's the most important thing that you can do. Of course, I also want to stand up here and be soft, be emotional. Show up and understand that we can do that emotional work and promote emotional literacy. Most importantly, I want to recognize the ways that emotional suppression harms health, both mental and physical, and reframe that as strength. Thank you.
All right, RJ, anybody want to follow up?